Okay. Yeah, this is a very uncomfortable one for me, but we'll go with it. Okay. Today, what I wanted to talk about is when one is presenting the Dharma, we have to be approaching it from first an insightful way and an honest way. We have to use wisdom, compassion, and patience. These are not so easy because when you have an audience, there's a mixed bag of people that are in it. Some of them are novices, some of them have been doing it for a while, and some of them are advanced students. And you don't want to reduce it down to the lowest common denominator and simply just do ABCs or foundational. This was something that Shakyamuni Buddha, after his spending a night under the Bodhi tree and going to present the Dharma, ran into right away when in his first lesson he presented the law of dependent origination, the 12 nidanas. And when he presented them, this is Pratika Samappada, causes and conditions never fail. Everybody was listening to him. It's like sometimes people listen to me and you go, do you know what he said? I don't know, but it sounded good. But they really don't really penetrate it. And so he presented the Four Noble Truths to everyone. And the Four Noble Truths was something that was adopted and really pushed by the Theravadins, the study of the elders, as what was important. And in that, they were looking at it and seeing everything as that everything is real. Everything is just this way. And Mahayana came along, and Mahayana was looking at it from a different viewpoint and seeing the practice from a different viewpoint. And this is where we're at in terms of when we talk about it. A lot of times when we present Chan, we present it from the idea of the Four Noble Truths and how we want to perfect this human being. But if we look at a different viewpoint from the right view, then we see that this kind of a foundational premise is actually baseless. It's baseless in that, in absolute reality, as mentioned, there is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path. And obviously, these are not my words. But that was the major change that came through from Mahayana. And we go, yes, that's right. There is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cessation of suffering, and no path. What does that mean? I don't know. But it sounds good. But we don't explore it enough. We don't investigate it enough. And we kind of fall back into the Four Noble Truths as the foundational. But if we go into the Chan practice, we look at Hui Ning. Hui Ning, it Platform Sutra. There's a reason why it's named the Platform Sutra, because it's foundational to Mahayana. And in the Platform Sutra, it's showing that it's just this right view. Everything is just mine. And when we see things in this way, it changes the way that one practices. And a lot of people say, hold on, don't go so fast with them. You're going to lose everybody. And I would say, yes, I'm guilty. You know, in my way of practicing, I've lost people, but I've also gained others that made it worth it. that we're able to turn the corner and to see that this practice of mind is different. It's not about the idea of the self or a personality or a life and being. It's more than that, and we have to look at that. Oftentimes, there are people on the mind work forum that ask me, "How do you do this? How do you do this? How do you meditate? How do you contemplate? What does this mean?" As if I could give you an answer, you might as well be saying, "What is mind?" So I answer you. Sometimes it may not be the answer that you want, but it is necessary to answer you in this way. Anything else would be a sham. I don't have the answers that you were looking for, but I know where to look. And I know who looks, which is even more important. Like, who is this? But it's not a who emanating from samsara. It is what samsara emanates from, just mind. And it's very interesting. Last night, I was listening to a lecture of Shifu's, Master Sheng, and the program was entitled "The Difference Between God and Buddha." Very, very interesting, and he handled it in a very wise way in terms of explaining the Judeo-Christian understanding of God and what God's function is versus the Buddha. And probably the most important part that he said, which is what I am constantly trying to impart to you, is that there is no Buddha God or deity or supreme being. There is no such thing. There's not somebody, if you traveled outside the universe, you would find the Buddha sitting on a golden throne, and they'd say, "Who are you?" "I'm the source. I'm the source of everything." That would be an appearance. The appearances show up in samsara for us to be able to understand things. And it's difficult for us to understand those things. And I kind of point out, and it's kind of funny because in the Bible, in the Old Testament, there was this burning bush that was talking to people. And I think that kind of an idea of a burning bush was difficult for those people to fathom, and that was essentially at that point the Jewish people, in terms of a burning bush. But when it came time for Christianity, then it became the Son of God that appears. So this appearance body now takes on this this anthropomorphic viewpoint, which is very comfortable to sentient beings, that we want to have a someone or something that we idol that looks like us. We can't necessarily relate to a burning bush. So we create the Buddha and the Bodhisattvas in our image, just like the Christians did in their way of looking at it. The difference between the God and the Buddha, Master Sheng said, was that in that belief system, everything is determined by God, who makes these decisions for everything in some kind of a divine design, which somewhat questions the idea of free will. In Buddhism, we do not have that kind of an interplay with the Buddha, where the Buddha is making this world, making this decisions. I often say that this world is made up of the fabric of mind, but it is something that the Buddha is a fabric of that mind. It's an appearance within that mind, but the mind itself cannot be described. It does not have a form. It is what creates form. So it is in this way that it permeates everything. The Buddha is not above karma. It's in harmony with karma. And we are in harmony with karma, or should be in harmony with karma. Today, I was listening to Master Sheng again in a lecture, and he was talking about that we're always afraid to die because we don't know where we're going to go to. We're afraid of that. We're not certain. But we never look at the causes. We're never afraid of the causes. If you lie, if you steal, if you kill, you can have a very poor rebirth. We never worry about that. We only worry about that at the very end when we go, oh, I shouldn't have done that, I shouldn't have done that. But even that kind of an explanation does not explain mind. It only explains this treadmill that we're in called samsara, that we can go up and down this ladder of rebirths from the hell realm all the way up to the heaven realm. But all of that is a dream. We, with right view, have to look at it in a different way. And there's two aspects of right view. Right view is, in a samsaric way, an explanation of how mind works. And so when we understand that intellectually, then we can comport our practice and our attention in our practice in the proper way. Right view, as a perfected right view, is not a view, because it doesn't look from high up down to samsara. There is no viewpoint in that way, no elevation there. We always want to think that heaven is above us, hell is below us. But we're on this rock that keeps spinning around. So exactly which is up and which is down? And is up and down different to somebody on the other side of the planet? It is because we have everything related to this corporal body. We cannot go beyond that. We are frustrated because we want to see something. We want to touch the hand of God. And then maybe that way we can have some kind of a spiritual experience. But it isn't that way in Buddhism, where we don't wait until we die to go in front of the Buddha or go in front of King Yama and to decide where we're going to go up or down or whatever. In true Buddhist practice, these things are empty. That is what was the message of the Heart Sutra. The heart of Buddhism. The heart of Buddhism giving compassion. But we only understand a very little bit of that. We never bother to look behind the curtain, because what we see and what we understand in the Heart Sutra is all about this world, about what's around in this world. Mind, on the other hand, this world is like if all of the rivers in the world, all of them, there were grains of sand, and each one of those was a river. Maybe that one little grain of sand of one of them would be the equivalent to this world in mind. Just such a tiny, tiny, tiny speck, a tiny speck of space, a tiny speck of time, literally, just a tiny speck. But we want to, with this body, give it some meaning. We want to be able to touch the Buddha, never knowing that we have the Buddha mind right now. We don't understand that. So it's difficult for us to look at things in a proper perspective in terms of how we see it. We should cast aside trying to please the Buddha or please the Bodhisattvas. Just do what is necessary, carry out the functions in a pure way without the semblance of a self or a personality or a life and being. In this way, it will work. So what I wanted to do, this is kind of a long preface to some quotes I wanted to run by you. So perhaps maybe they can string together and help you make some sense of this and what the practice really is. This is actually from the Blue Cliff record, case 37. Panshan, there is nothing in the world. And it reads as follows, and this is only the first part of it. It is futile effort to linger in thought over the action of a lightning bolt. When the sound of thunder fills the sky, you will hardly have time to cover your ears. To unfurl the red flag of victory over your head, whirl the twin swords behind your ears. It is not for a discriminating eye or a familiar hand. How could anyone be able to succeed? Some people lower their heads and linger in thought, trying to figure it all out with their intellect. They hardly realize that they are seeing ghosts without number in front of their skulls. Now tell me, without falling into intellect, without being caught up in gain or loss, when suddenly there is such a demonstration to awaken you, how will you reply? How would you reply? I'm not going to talk about these. I just want to give you food for thought so that you can see these and try to feel what is being presented to you. And this is from the demonstration of the inconceivable state of Buddhahood. The Buddha said, the absence of thought is the state of the unconditioned. The absence of thought is the state of the unconditioned. Manjushri said, well, honored one, if the states of the unconditioned and so forth are the state of Buddhahood and the state of the unconditioned is the absence of thought, then on what basis is the Buddhahood expressed? If there's no such basis, then there's nothing to be said. And since there's nothing to be said, nothing can be expressed. Therefore, world honored one, the state of the Buddhahood is inexpressible in words. Ah, this is the dilemma of someone that's a well-known advisor presenting the Dharma. How do you express something that is inexpressible in words? Do you not say anything? If you not say anything, then there's nothing to come of it. So you do that, but how can you do that? The Buddha asked Manjusri, where should the state of Buddhahood be sought? So where are we going to find this Buddhahood? Manjusri answered, it should be sought right in the defilements of sentient beings. Why? Because by nature, the defilement of sentient beings are inapprehensible. Realization of this is beyond the comprehension of the Shravakas and the Pratika Buddhas. Therefore, it is called the state of Buddhahood. So what he's referring to is, and he's saying, look, it's inexpressible in words. It is this, it's inapprehensible. You cannot apprehend it. No matter how much you try in the samsaric world, you could never apprehend the state of Buddhahood. You would cheapen it out if you go, oh, I'm enlightened. Really? Are you really enlightened? Then what are you doing on this little grain of sand? That's why he said that the Sravaka sound hearers and Pratika Buddhas, those Buddhas that have reached some higher state, still do not get it because they do not understand this aspect of it. This is from distinguishing phenomena from its intrinsic nature, the Dharmata Vibhaga from Maitreya. And again, I'm just giving you snippets for you to try to get a feel for this. So all of these, whether it's sutras or treatises, whatever it is, they all say the same thing. And if you look at it, you understand this from the right view, what appears to be so difficult to understand becomes very, very easy. The non-existent phenomena that appear are likened to illusions, dreams, and so forth. Fundamental transformation is likened to space, gold, water, and so forth. So it's here talking about that there is these illusions and dreams. So this non-existent phenomena is just like that, illusions or dreams. If you had a dream from last night, you could try to remember it, but it really has no place in this world. But likewise, the samsara, this dream, it is a puff of smoke in mind itself. And this idea of showing that things are like space, empty, or gold, so precious, water, so flowing, and so forth, is using analogies to help us understand that this mind is a very flowing, very precious. We do not understand that. This one I've read to you before, but I think it's important because this is coming from the Platform Sutra, and the fifth patriarch Hong Zhen talking to Hui Ning and giving him his last instructions in talking about the Diamond Sutra. And he said that the patriarch covered them with a precept sash so that no one could see them. And he explained the Diamond Sutra for him down to the line. One should produce a thought that is nowhere supported. One should produce a thought that is nowhere supported. Huineng, he really could penetrate what was said here. To us, it's more difficult. Do you really understand what's being said here? Can you feel it? It is something very profound. It's pointing directly to the mind. It is the same as one thought for 10,000 years. We cannot understand that. How can I present that to you in words? You see, it is very, very difficult. So the only thing you can do is to contemplate. So the beginners ask, what is contemplation? It's not thinking. You don't think. So what do you do by not thinking? Well, you can think of not thinking. That's the one thought for 10,000 years. You don't think. Now, Huineng clearly understood this. And this one thought is just being in the present moment. Thoughts come and go to him all the time, but they don't stick. They are nowhere supported. This is different because when one functions in this way, one could not be said to be thinking. Everything is naturally flowing from the causes and conditions. Everything's naturally flowing from mind itself. The moment we stop to think, I am thinking this, I am thinking of something good, it stops. This flow stops. But this is the way that we think, and this is the way we practice. We have to say, I want to not do bad. I want to do this. I want to get this. We mess it all up. It is not in this way. So what I'm presenting to you is to have this right view. Look at things in the proper way. This is from the Diamond Sutra. Subhuti, what do you think? Let no one say the Tathagata cherishes the idea, I must liberate all living beings. To allow no such thought, Subhuti. Wherefore, because in reality, there are no living beings to be liberated by the Tathagata. If there were living beings for the Tathagata to liberate, he would partake in the idea of selfhood, personality, ego, entity, or separate individuality. Subhuti, though the common people accept egoity as real, the Tathagata declares that the ego is not different than no ego. Subhuti, those whom the Tathagata referred to as common people are not really common people. It's just merely a name. And again, here, this is the idea of the middle path, where we see things, they neither exist, neither not exist. We cannot grasp onto that. And when people would ask, and I can think of many in my mind work forum, if they had this conversation with Nagarjuna, Nagarjuna would just turn off the channel and say, figure it out, because that's the way it is. Figure it out. You have to contemplate this, but it is not in the words. It is not in conceptualization of something. All of that is conditional, and mind is unconditioned. Unconditioned means is mind does not appear as a result of some previous cause. Only samsara is like this. Pratika Samapada applies to the samsaric realm. Pratika Samapada is how mind works. It's inseparable from it. And there are these causes, but these causes appear naturally in accordance with the self-nature of mind. It is not easy for us to understand that, because we want to try to fit it in to our intellect. And our intellect cannot penetrate this. No matter how smart you are, how wise you are in the ways of the world, you could not do that. There is a story of one of the Buddha's disciples that was very difficult, very stupid. He couldn't remember anything. And because he could not remember anything, the Buddha assigned him to just sweep the courtyard, sweep the courtyard. And he kept sweeping it without the idea of any thought. And until one moment that he was able to penetrate through. It was not from the intellect that he was able to do this. It was because he was not thinking of it. When he tried to think about the Dharma or remember a verse or whatever, his mind stopped. But letting go of this conditional mind freed him to the true and absolute mind. And very interesting, those who were studying so hard, they became very jealous of him, because they go, how could he? He's a simpleton. How could he get it just simply from sweeping the courtyard? They could not understand it because they were approaching everything from the idea of intellect, being the smartest, being the star. But that doesn't really put you at the front of the class. In some ways, it's a hindrance, because then you're so worried you don't even want to ask a question or respond to a question lest somebody question your understanding. This is very pitiable, because when we truly understand, we freely give what we can to help others. Continue on. Actually, I'm working backwards from what my lecture is, but I think it will work. I'll read just a little bit of this. This is, again, we're back to the Lankavatara Sutra. And this is section 94. Mahatma once more asked the Buddha, The Bhagavan has said that due to projections that we imagine the existence of different things, and it isn't they themselves that exist, but only a projection of them that exists. Bhagavan, if it is only a projection of something that exists, and its own corresponding existence does not exist, would not the affliction and the purification of the Bhagavan, of which the Bhagavan speaks, also suffer from non-existence, since the existence of whatever is imagined does not itself exist? So he's asking him, if these things are this way and they really don't exist, then whatever you're talking about, whether it's a purification or an affliction, those would not exist either. What do you think the Buddha's going to tell him? The Buddha told Mahamati, so it is. So it is. It is as you say, Mahamati. What is real is not what fools imagine as existing. What they imagine as existing lacks characteristics of its own existence. However, Mahamati, according to the Buddha knowledge, there is something that exists, something the existence of which is known by means of noble insight and noble vision of the eye of the noble wisdom. Mahamati asked the Buddha, although there are those who are wise, thus know what exists by means of noble insight and noble vision of the eye of the noble wisdom, and not by means of any kind of a divine or physical eye, that is not what fools imagine, Bhagavan, then how do fools get free of such projections if they're unaware of this higher reality? Very, very important here. Because remember, we were talking about how to present the Dharma. How indeed do they get free of it if you don't tell them? If you don't explain it to them? How could they possibly know that? They're just walking around in this world aimlessly, lifetime after lifetime. Even if they wanted to get it, they couldn't, because they do not know of this noble vision and noble wisdom. Give me a second. I'll try to. Sorry, I lost my place. Because they are unaware of this higher reality. For they are neither diluted, Bhagavan, nor are they of a higher reality. And because they do not see what transcends the characteristics of existence and non-existence, because they don't understand that. What transcends that is emptiness, this idea that we have of this, let's say, noble wisdom is the emptiness of all appearances. Bhagavan, the wise do not view what they imagine as real in this manner, because they do not consider the individual characteristics of the external realms as external. Bhagavan, they thus perceive the characteristics of the self-existence as an imagined reality, and do not say that it is due to the presence or absence of causes, but due to the falling prey to views of existence. And there's is different realm, unlike that. But this is a circular argument, Bhagavan, because the characteristics of self-existence are not known. Also, Bhagavan, if the characteristics of the self-existent are not the result of an imagined reality, how is their projection not a projection rather than a discrimination of suchness? So he's asking these questions they're all asking from the viewpoint of samsara. And he continues on, and let me kind of get to where the Buddha speaks about this. He says, I do not teach the non-existence of detachment, nor do I fall prey to views of existence in speaking of higher reality of Buddha knowledge. Rather, it is to help beings who have been attached to existence since time without beginning overcome their fears. To those attached to views of existence of higher reality, I teach detachment. Mahamati, I do not teach characteristics of self-existence. Rather, Mahamati, I focus on the potential realization of detachment, on transcending deluded views, on transcending views of what exists but does not exist, what are the perceptions of one's own mind, on obtaining the threefold liberation, on being marked with the mark of suchness, on examining self-existence based on personal realization, on transcending views of existence and not existence of what is real. And he continues on, but the point here is he's not trying to present anything in a conceptual way. What he's trying to do is present the right view. And this is something where in the Madhyamika school with Nagarjuna, there was just this negation. Many philosopher and Buddhist scholars, they look at this in terms of this negation of Nagarjuna as some form of a trap or nonsensical statements, or even worse, that it's nihilistic, that there's nothing there. It's because they cannot see what Nagarjuna is clearly pointing from, not to, but pointing from. What is being pointed from is the right view. The right view is not a locale of something here, seeing something here, but clearly it isn't in this way. Right view is the suchness or thusness of mind, that mind is settled and is clear, that is functioning. Even when it appears to be profane, it nevertheless is functioning perfectly. This is not something easy for us to understand. We go, how can the Buddha create? The Buddha didn't create that. Those are causes that come up in samsara. This is how the mind works. But we do not say, oh, the Buddha created this. The Buddha, in a very esoteric way, has an interest in alleviating the suffering of illusory sentient beings, but is never alleviating the suffering of sentient beings. It just understands that these things must be dealt with. This is not easy for us to gather up, because we want to see that there's a purposeful Buddha in action, anthropomorphizing it to a human being. It is not a human being. It does not have the traits of a human being. The human beings are a product of this dream state. It appears in mind, but we cannot say that it is generated from the mind itself, except to say that it is the fabric of mind, but it's not intended by the Buddha to be in this way. Otherwise, the Buddha would be a designer of everything. The only thing we can say is that the Dharmakaya, the mind ground, enables for these projections to appear. It does not interfere with them. This is not easy for us to understand that. We'd rather say, oh, there's a God that sets everything into motion. And so we got to keep on the good side of God, because heck, he could damn me to hell. I don't want that to happen. This is a religion of confusion, a religion of fear. We fear God. One should not fear the Buddha. One should demonstrate the compassion and love of the Buddha heart. This is the best that we can do. One more. Again, as I was mentioning, I'm starting or finishing where I should have started from. And this is a discussion. This is an old book, Zen Buddhism, a history of India and China from, I think his name's Heinrich Dumoulin. And it's not bad. It's not bad stuff. Some people poo-poo it now, some professors and stuff, but it's not. It's pretty good stuff. And when you look at it, there's plenty to discuss. As you practice more and more, you may take some issues with some of the things, but it's still not bad. It's when was it written? A while back. No, I can't find the date of it. 2005. So a few years old. But I want to read you a little bit of this because I think it's helpful. And it says, faithful and scholars alike have the heart for exploring origins, but all too often the beginnings of religious movements are shrouded in shadows. Images of founders often get obscured by legend and their supposed teaching detached from the past in order to better highlight their uniqueness and originality. This is also true of the image of Bodhidharma within the Zen school of meditation. Take, for example, the famous four-line stanza attributed to Bodhidharma, but actually formulated much later during the Tang period when Zen had reached its apogee. A special transmission outside the scriptures, not founded upon words and letters, by pointing directly to one's mind, it lets one see into one's own true nature and thus attain Buddhahood. For later generations, these lines represent the quintessence of Zen as embodied in the figure of Bodhidharma. In Zen literature, the question of Bodhidharma's arrival in China from the West became synonymous with the meaning of Zen. The stanza contains two pivotal statements of which the entire Bodhidharma legend revolves. The first two lines, spiritual transmission. This is a treasured heritage of Buddhism, the goal of the Buddhist quest, the insight born of enlightenment that he wished to share with all peoples. It is a special transmission that has been especially entrusted to the Zen school. The first spiritual transmission from Shakyamuni Buddha to Kasyapa established the Zen patriarchs. Along with the patriarchs, the Bodhidharma brought the seal of the Buddha mind from the Indian motherland to the Middle Kingdom. In hold on, don't want to. Oh, here it is. The little sticker that said Monday. Oh, it is Monday, so it's okay. Okay. No. Sorry, I missed the part that I wanted to. Oh, here it is. I have too many different kinds of markers. This is distinguished from the other markers. The notion of emptiness is not entirely original to the sutras of the perfect wisdom. In the Abhidharma, Sunya represents dukkha, suffering, and grasping of emptiness is one of the doors to liberation. In the Wisdom Sutras, the stress is put on demonstrating the doctrine of emptiness of inherent nature, swabhava, free from all inherent nature and lacking of any quality or form. Things are as they are empty. Hence, the emptiness is the same as thusness, and because all is empty, they are also all the same. Whatever can be named with words is empty and equal. Sameness embraces all materials and psychic things as part of the whole world becoming that stands in opposition to undefinable nirvana. In emptiness, nirvana and samsara are seen as the same. The identity of emptiness, thusness, sameness embraces the entire Dharma realm. Like the Dharma realm, perfect wisdom is unfathomable, indescribable. Here it is the wisdom reaches its culmination. Here the doctrine on wisdom reaches its culmination. So we're talking about now the shift in Mahayana, which is the Wisdom Sutras, and we can kind of equate it to the Heart Sutra in terms of this. And of the special importance for Zen is the fact that the perfect wisdom reveals the essence of enlightenment. As a synonym for emptiness and thusness, enlightenment is neither existent nor non-existent. It cannot be described or explained. Just the path of enlightenment, just enlightenment is the path. Although the statements of perfect wisdom in the basic early texts of the Prajnaparamita literature are open to transcendence, wisdom, even in its identification with wisdom, with emptiness, thusness, sameness, Dharma realm, enlightenment, remains in a state of suspension. It touches the realm of the absolute, and yet it is not itself an absolute being. So there's no absolute being here. Lamont summed things up in this way in the monumental study and translation of the seminal texts of East Asian Buddhism. And this is his quote: perfected wisdom is not a being in the metaphysical order, nor is it a subsistence absolute to which one can adhere. It is rather a spiritual state, transcending the categories of existence and non-existence, empty of every quality. Perfect wisdom can be neither affirmed nor denied. It is excellence in which nothing is lacking. And this is where I started off. How do you present that? The only way you can present it is the way I did it tonight, by showing you many different sources saying the same thing. They're talking about that it's neither existent nor non-existent. You heard me read it from many sources. Does that put you closer to the absolute truth? Only if you don't think that you're closer to the absolute truth. It reveals to you the gateway of this gateless gate, which is simply just to practice and to contemplate. It is not easy for us to do that, but it is necessary if we want to practice right view. We need to shut down the thought factory. We need to shut down that which desires continuation. When we can shut down the mind that desires continuation or knowledge for knowledge's sake, then we have an opportunity. The disciple that brushed the courtyard with the broom, shut it down. Those with more intellectual leanings, it's difficult to do that. It's very, very difficult because of the fact that we have this wealth of knowledge. We don't know what to do with it. Sometimes I run into people, Buddhist scholars, and they can dominate conversations or dominate a group. I don't know if you've ever been in a group where there's somebody there that's such a know-it-all, and they kill the group because they always have an opinion, they always have this understanding, but they don't have an understanding of even the basic dynamics of the group or compassion. They just want people to listen to them. What use is that? I always tell you, I don't have anything to teach you. All I want to do is for you to practice in the right way, to give you a chance to do that. This is how we do it. But it's not an easy thing to do, because the moment that I believe I'm teaching you something, the moment that I'm moving you farther from it. So, of course, I still present the Dharma, I present education, I present the history, I present the doctrines, because those are things that are helpful so long as we do not cling to them. The moment that we cling to any of this, then we lose it. And this is very pitiable. But the moment we put it all down and we just simply rest in the present moment, then we're not far from it. That's why sometimes I will say to my students, the path ahead is clear. Like the snow has melted, you can go forward this way. It's not the only way, but for that student, that's a good way for them to go. They're making progress. But the moment that we talk about making progress, that's when we mess everything up. When we think and measure things in terms of, we are here now, we can never get it that way. The moment that I decided to put down all expectations was that the moment that you could say the clouds cleared. And the clouds didn't necessarily have to clear. The clouds were just perfectly in their place. But the Buddha mind can see right through it. Shifu once asked us that there is the seeing from the eyes, the seeing from the third eye, seeing from the Dharma eye, the wisdom eye, and the Buddha eye. And he asked us, what eye does the Buddha use? Now, I've said this before, so a lot of you know the answer. But think, what eye does the Buddha use? And the answer is so simple. He uses all of them, because all of them, I shouldn't even say he, because I'm anthropomorphizing. The Buddha uses all eyes because all eyes are the Buddha. Inseparable. We don't think in terms, or we should not perceive in terms of time and space. Those concepts are relative. When we can abandon those, we do not necessarily abandon our function in this world. We still follow the rules of the samsara, but we're clear about it, that this is not the means to the end to be a perfected human being. We just see that this is where our work is. Delivering illusory sentient beings is just simply awakening a portion of the Buddha mind. This is right view. So I hope this helped you. I went on for a while and I went into some things that are very complicated and deep, but it's okay. I just wanted to give you a flavor of different sources to say, these sources all say the same thing. So when you come here, if you begin to listen to this, the pieces will begin to fit together. Not bad, because the more they fit together, the more use you're going to have out of this body to help others. So I truly hope that this is how you will approach everything. So Amitofo, thank you for listening. I'm sorry for the delays earlier. I'll take a few questions. I know it's already late for some of you, so not too many questions tonight. Thank you.
Please raise your hand if you have a question using the raise hand reaction.
Yes, Sam.
Hello, Gilbert. Thank you. I just wanted to say I really appreciated that the different sources you provided and the Blue Cliff record reference, especially because I was recently gifted the Blue Cliff record. I actually had a question about the case very quickly. It says the main subject to case 37 is Banzan said to his disciples, in the three worlds there is no Dharma. Where could you find the mind? And I just wanted to ask, the three worlds are inside of mind, or they would be within mind or of mind. So when he asks, where would you find the mind? Couldn't you point to hypothetically anything?
Not really, because if you say anything, a thing, if it has a name, is a projection within mind. It exists and doesn't exist. And we can't say or should not try to debate its existence or non-existence. It is just something that mind perceives. And it to go any further than that will just be an intellectual debate between two illusory beings.
Thank you, Gilbert. Thank you so much for today as well.
You're welcome.
Amitofo.
Amitofo. Nobody else? I must have burned you out today. So I see a lot of you, but let's see page 2 here. I'm surprised you guys don't have questions. This is not something that's very easy. And the reason I'm pointing to it is because from the viewpoint of an instructor, to try to present the Dharma, it has to be presented in an honest way, and an adept way that that you have to look towards mind in this. When I say look towards mind, it's actually the reverse, looking from mind. But it's, once we create the idea of space, then we're far from it. It is the lack of space that brings mind to mind. Anybody else? Nobody? No.
Gilbert, I have a question. Hello.
Okay, go ahead.
Recently, I was listening to a Dharma talk by somebody who, like a accomplished monk who trained in the Theravada and Mahayana, and he said that in the Theravada, if you apply the Theravada way of meditation, you can do extraordinary things, like where you can see beyond the senses just by increasing the concentration. So in a sense, you don't use the five senses, but mind perceives directly and can, for example, taste the liver, see its color, and do these type of things. And I wonder, in a sense, it's like transcending the senses. And in another sense, it's still a sensation, just it's mind sensing. So is this type of practice helpful to realize right view, or is it more seeking colors?
Not really. I mean, I again call your attention to the 8th volume of the Sheng Sutra, the 50 demonic skandhas or viewpoints. No, those things happen. We don't make anything special out of them. They just happen, and as long as we leave them alone, it's fine. There are things that, as one begins to practice, happen that seem to be very super mundane, but it is okay. I mean, yesterday I was talking to one of my students from Taiwan, and as I was communicating with him, out of the blue, my picture showed up on his computer, and he has no idea how that happened, but it just filled the screen. Is it supernatural? It doesn't matter. Those kinds of things, they happen all the time. They defy coincidence. But I was giving him a very sincere lesson, and it happened. And we don't think about that or hold on to it or say that I only mention it to you because these things happen all the time. But it is not something that I look for or hold and say, oh, this is very special or whatever. It's just mind that is teaching mind. Sometimes things like that happen where the mind will reveal itself. It's okay, because ultimately we see that this is just simply projections, a dream, and the mind can interject whatever it wants within that dream because it's made out of the very fabric of mind. So those things are there. We just, as long as we don't cling to them, we just understand that they appear to be a seam in what our apparent reality. When I say a seam, it's like like if you had a curtain and there's a seam in it, you know, you'd say, oh, well, that curtain should be complete. It shouldn't have a seam in it or a tear in it or whatever. But these are all little tears in the idea of reality that we'd say, how could that possibly be that way? No, who's running the show? How did that happen? We don't have to worry about that. We just understand that these are just little indications that the world is not as concrete as we believe it is. So long as one does not look for those super mundane things or hold on to them, even more importantly, then they will appear in life. They appear all the time. We just don't see them. We're not aware of them. But if you're aware of them, the whole world appears to be much, much different than what it appears to be just using our eyes from our regular eyesight. It's a good question. I mean, that's something that comes up, but these things happen. I mean, people can develop skills, but it's not something that, you know, you want to measure a person because they have these skills or abilities.
Thank you, Gilbert.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Last one. Not even you, Ian. You're too enlightened now, coming back from your lengthy, how long was it? 196 days retreat? I guess not. Okay. All right. All the people that had questions before, you guys didn't ask any tonight. So there's going to be a quick test next week to see if you guys were paying attention. Hopefully I'll have my computer worked out and solved by then. So thank you. And again, sorry for the mechanical difficulties. I'll try to work on it before the next one and figure out what's going on with my computer. So thank you very much. We will see you next week. Omitofo.